Please explain that this is so important, Her Bak entreated. The Medu Netters are there to teach you to understand them. I will add this to help you. Pronunciation of the two letters is effected by the tip of the tongue with the breath of the nostril for N and of the mouth for S. Now, NS is cosmic man's double source of energy. N shows itself above all in the blood and its qualities. S in the marrow and all that derives from it. Notice that the inversion of these two letters gives the root sen, which means two. Her Bak saw the point, as they were chosen to form the word two. One may suppose they express what is most characteristically dual. The conclusion is sound, don't forget this. What you must keep in mind, if you are to follow our Master's thinking, is that all organs work together in the functioning of the whole, under the direction of the heart and tongue, as the texts say. Quote, all the eyes see, the ears hear, the nose smells, comes to the heart, which synthesizes it into living consciousness. All that is thus conceived will be repeated by the tongue and worked on by hati, unquote. In this way, the manifestation of things comes about, in the mode of creation and in circular fashion. If you can hear the meanings of the heart, hati, tongue, in yourself, you will understand the connection of human and cosmic organs, and the cosmic functions which human functions illustrate. At the same time, you can study the relations between our senses and the world's constitutive elements. You have just seen that taste is the sense of the liquid, the water element, that sight is the sense of the radiant, the fire element, that smell is the sense of the vaporous, the air element. The touch is the sense of the corporal, the earth element. This is the common explanation of the obvious relations between the sense organs and states of matter, the practical, realistic point of view. But there is another, less obvious because of a subtler, a causal order, which takes into account the generative quality of each sense and its principal origin. The passivity of Hathor, who generates the word, is the source of the quality of audibility. But this, quote, celestial face, unquote, contains also the other four generative principles. Firelight, that causes visibility, essential air, that causes tangibility, essential water, that causes sapidity, essential earth, that causes odorability. You will notice that this differs from what I first said about the elemental relations between touch and smell. We are speaking now of the secret qualities of air and earth considered as factors in Genesis. It is this that makes them secret or not usually discussed. As to air, compare what has just been said about knum and smell. As to earth, compare what has just been said about knum and smell. As to air, cause of tangibility, remember that it is air, netter, shu, who by separating heaven and earth gives them both tangible existence in duality. Since the organs of sense are in the face, said Her Bak, the face is a mirror in which we can perceive. All we can perceive is reflected. Just so. This is why the word her, face, denotes also the chief Heri, whose part it is to keep in contact with the external world by his faculties of perception, to see, hear and observe. To the governed, he presents the face of authority, the supreme authority to whom he gives information and warning. Never forget that the inner meaning of her is the sense of the presence. When you say ab, meaning in, quote, at the heart of, unquote, you are saying precisely, quote, what is present in the heart of, unquote. Her sa. Behind means present behind, and is the same with other phrases that use her in this sense. It is the presence that the exercise of the facial senses reveal, the disciple remarked. But why is the sky sign so often added to the chief's title? Because this sign, called her in such a case, indicates above or higher. A man's head drawn in profile and containing the brain symbolises another phase of authority. It is the summit of human body, tep, which is upside down in the word pet, heaven. World of ideas that reflects the world of archetypes. The head is the centre where relation, comparison, organisation take place and command is exercised. The chief, tep, isn't necessarily in touch with those he directs, which is why you will usually find the two words heri, tep, coupled. For most headmen or chiefs in our kingdom are obliged to double the functions of observation and command in order to ensure the carrying out of the law. Master, said Her Bak, you have taught that the brain has a secondary role by reference to intuition. How is it that in the imagery of some funerary texts, the head is only shown sometimes emerging from a mound or plant, as if it were the dead man's surviving element? Your interpretation is incomplete, through ignorance of certain constituents of the being. Pending fuller instruction, remember that the human head contains not only the organs of thought and of cerebral centres of every bodily function, but physical centres, seats of higher states, of which we will speak later, that when awakened are in touch with the spiritual heart. It is a complete little world where all, quote, states of being, unquote, and all activities possible to man are found, as it were, in posts of command. And finally, it is in the head that there is enacted the highest mystery of sublimation into subtle energies of physical elements that proceed from the body, just as the corporal senses, which have their organs in the face, are transformed into spiritual senses there. The head, then, represents the highest gestation of human functions, and in the case you mention, symbolises a similar gestation after death. The disciple listened closely, fearing the possibility of misunderstanding. So important a teaching, he said, should leave no room for doubt. Could you enlighten me on one point? If the intelligence of the heart is to conceive of knowledge as a combined product of perceptions I can't see, in spite of all you have just said, why the head, tep, symbolises the chief who coordinates and commands. Your question certainly calls for an answer, said the sage. An unfinished teaching could mislead you. Your idea of a chief is wrong. A chief, heri, tep, or heritep, is neither king, the leaven of his people, nor the spiritual quickener of king and kingdom. I will tell you, at the right time, what you must know about this dual power, but from now on, look for its image in man. in whom all stages of consciousness, were it only in embryo, are found. As the moon reflects Ra's burning light in light that is cold and thin, so the heart's vision is reflected in the brain. But whereas the heart synthesizes perceptions into vital consciousness, the brain separates, localizes them, as well as performing other functions of comparison and coordination that are indispensable if a chief is to form rational judgments. That is why the word for brain, asis, is an inversion of sia, the consciousness of the heart. I thought the cerebral organ was called If you would understand the nature of things, you should study attentively the name that is given them and the reason for it. The word for the head viscera is ais, and the same for the belly viscera. This is in no way surprising if you look that both have multiple convolutions. The functional analogy is as real as the look of it. The brain, ais, handles sense impressions as the intestines handle food prepared in the stomach. The breaking down and localization of various substances in the alimentary mass takes place in parts of the intestine specialized for the purpose. Similarly, various regions in the cerebral convolutions, each according to its function, take in sensory perceptions which, isolated and localized, are compared, examined in other functional regions of the brain and projected from the material organ as ideas. The parts of the head viscera, then, work like those of the belly viscera. They select constituents of what comes in according to their, quote, functional affinities, unquote. But here we must distinguish material and therefore quantitative functions from functions of a more abstract and qualitative kind. It is here that the wisdom in our language gives you a vital glimpse of what speculation could never discern and express. Compare the word ais, name of the upper and lower viscera, with which refers to a function belonging as much to the body as to thinking personality. The function of ingesting, absorbing, on the one hand foodstuffs, on the other perceptions. I am now speaking of an immaterial function that causes the physical activity of an organ that swallows and incorporates because of it. This applies to the animal that devours its prey, to the brain that absorbs sense perceptions, and to Amit, swallower of the dead, who is no other than nature taking back into herself parts of a corpse that belong to her. Am is the root that signifies this function. Am, by the double M, gives the ideas of reabsorption into one's self, monopolization. A suggests individual limitation. In point of fact, nature, belly and brain absorb in proportion to their capacity. Now, consider Eis as a material organ. Sia is the immaterial fruit of perceptions assimilated by the intelligence of the heart. Thoughts, product of the cerebral organ Ais, proceed on the one hand from a contribution from without, ideas put forth by other brains and taken in by the mental faculty of absorption Am. On the other, from personal experience, sensorial or intuitive perceptions changed by comparison, dissociation or association of ideas received and recorded. Such personal thoughts then become forms that the brain Ais puts out and the Am function of other brains may receive, without intervention of word or writing, by evocation, therefore. Understand, Her Bak, that as the sun's sphere of radiation is larger than the physical globe, Aten, a sphere of heat, light and various wave movements, your functional thought body, Am, is larger than your brain, Ais. It is because of this that you can recall memories and ideas written in Am at the instance of the corresponding centres of Ais, which are only relaying stations. Her Bak strove to master the positive symbolism of the hieroglyphs and the meaning of the roots. This difficult lesson, he said, was indispensable if I was to learn how a play of letters can teach without theory, by symbolic evocation, the connection between the functional causes at work in the human body and the organic functions that are an expression of them. Your effort has borne fruit, said the sage. You have understood the aim of my discourse, which should serve as an example when you are trying to decipher our teaching. But you must still concentrate on learning to extract the marrow from a theme. What have you actually gathered? If I have really understood, Her Bak said, the organic spheres of the brain Ais and the immaterial function Am work together in the production of thoughts that are written into Am, and Ais can recover them at will. Exactly. But success will be proportional to the vigour and equilibrium of the head viscera. Memory will be good or bad. This exhibits the relativity and fallibility of ideas so recorded, since they proceed from coordinations of appearances that are more or less complete. Transcription by thought of knowledge gained by the heart is another thing. Consciousness of this order is a putting of something perceived in relation with what corresponds with it in ourselves. In contrast with such reality, thoughts that derive from an association of ideas external to your true being are excrement. The world or state, Am, is a state of perpetual absorption of all that is measurable and quantitatively assimilable in nature, whether material, food or rational concept. It is nature's greed. Sia is the world or state in which transmutation of the separative, analysing Seth activity into the synthesizing Horus activity facilitates discrimination between the personal and the particular I and the universal Ah. This is the sage's critical sense. Once more, then, we find that the concrete Ais can lead to the abstract Sia, whose fruit is immortal. But that which I say may awaken a vital logic in you and not merely be turned into set ideas. You must learn to distinguish between those two modes of thinking, taking advantage of the more complex to record enlightening details, but avoiding an analysis of dissected factors that would destroy vital unity and obscure the simple original idea. Her Bak couldn't hide his perplexity. Master, could you explain in what sense I'm to think of thought as useless for getting knowledge? Nothing in man is useless to him, but one must give each factor its true part. Thought should translate what consciousness has written in your body, your whole body. To do the opposite is the way to error. If you write into consciousness what you have worked up by argument, The result will be imaginings and arbitrary systems. You can invent nothing. You must assimilate what really is. This is to reverse the mode of thinking in which brain is king. Instinct, animal consciousness, such as that of ant or bee, knows without thinking what correlations of an invisible kind there are in nature though unable to coordinate ideas. But man, endowed with reason, who believes in incarnate spirit and gives his higher consciousness precedence over thought, goes beyond animal instinct and develops intuition. I call you to the true path, Her Bak. I speak living man to living man. I make no distinction between spirit and body, for all your body is required if you are to receive this teaching. You know nothing about the netter, little about the king. You are man, man is your cosmos. By man, you will know everything if you turn your back on Seth and his science. But for that, you must learn what puts man above animal, even the human animal, the earthly man who hasn't yet had the first quickening. It is this first quickening, as well as the quality of his individual car, that distinguishes him from the higher beasts. Man can receive two quickenings. One reaches its realization in the extreme possibilities of nature. The other begins his return into the cause. If the first reaches the limit of possibility in nature, said Her Bak, then nature can make nothing more perfect than man. Precisely. Man, born of woman, man in himself is the most perfect of creatures that carry the seed of their own reproduction on earth. Then the second quickening should carry man beyond nature, beyond and this side of it. For the quickening principle, that is his divine car, is the very essence of the unpronounceable, independent of nature and netters, which only affect the lower cars. Is nature dependent on the unpronounceable? Necessarily. Or there would be two absolutes. But nature must follow the cycles of becoming, of which the divine car is independent. You said man born of woman. Is there a man not born of woman? It is always a woman that gives the earthly body. While she carries it and nourishes it with her own substance, the first quickening of the body takes place. At the critical moments of the 40th day and the 4th month, in a man's life outside his mother's womb, there is a continuing birth of the individual car's consciousness. It is also at the 4th period of its earth age that a quickening takes place. Then, for the king of earthly creatures, there begins the possibility of a reign which surpasses that of Earthman through the growth of his higher consciousness, which he should nourish in himself as his mother nourished his body. So doing, he frees himself from the laws of earth, and that the more as influence of his divine car grows preponderant. Now you have the true king, who is the seed of his incorruptible being, the human Horus, woven by his car in the man who has sought to know it. The kingdom is not of this earth, for such a man, as you suppose, is beyond earth nature. Where is this king's throne? In a man's heart. This is no empty word, nor myth, nor image. It is positive reality. Do you think you know your heart? I know it makes my body live, but I don't know it. The heart that gives your body life is a vessel of flesh, blood distributor, Ab, the eternal thirst whose rhythm governs your existence. It imposes this rhythm on your whole organism as emanations from the sun Ra impinge on the wanderers, the planets that live in its orbit. Ra, heart of our solar system, like the heart that is sun in our body, could never perform its life-giving part of its physical form, was its soul reality destructible because corruptible. But our texts always speak of the indestructible sun. When we adjure a dead man not to lose his heart, Ab or Hati, in the other world, we obviously don't have in mind the heart of flesh that is shut up in the tomb. The heart, like the sun, is the centre of a world or system. It has, like the sun, two aspects, one visible and corporal, the other only perceptible by its effects. Aten, the solar disk, is but the physical body of the real star, centre of spheres of light, warmth, and various powers. The true solar heart is the source of our world's life. The heart of flesh, Ab, is the body of that sun of life and fire, which is the radiant centre of the soul Ba, whose lower aspect moves in the blood. Our true solar heart, our spiritual Ka's centre of attraction, is the meeting place of everything in us that desires and accepts its impulses. It can steady and quicken the heart of flesh, which beats with its life. Then the one heart becomes a heart of fire, a centre of light, a source of life that has all power to subjugate the animal in us. Her Bak meditated these words which gave his life purpose. But the master knew that vision, if it is to be effective, must connect with something practical. I have shown you the goal, he said. What matters now is the means. Can you find it in what I said about the Medunetters? If I have really taken your meaning, Her Bak replied, I think I may conclude that a man has two means of understanding and coordination, the comparative intelligence, Ais, and the intuitive intelligence, Sia. It is, as you put it, our masters attached such importance to this that they devised a formula. Quote, Who is the mouth and Sia in the heart? You know that Hu, nectar of taste, is the principle of the discernment of flavours, material therefore. If you remember the lesson on Medunetters, you will know that the double letter I symbolises two aspects of original activity. I gives the me, A the not me, the self. Sia is discrimination of the me and the self. It is, therefore, the principle of wisdom, knowledge of all things. It is understanding, which gives vital consciousness. As the comparative intelligence, Ais, is conditioned by the strength and precision of the cerebral faculties, its conclusions are relative. Into the play between Ais and Sia comes the personality, which may accept Sia knowledge in thankfulness or make difficulties. You have the emotional principle there. If emotion isn't suppressed or diverted by some rational interpretation, it will play a helpful part. It will manifest organically the consciousness of what is revealed. It acts on the heart through the solar plexus and awakens the solar light. Hence the phrase, intelligence of the heart. Mastery of these faculties with total submission of thought to heart knowledge is Sa, from which the me principle has been eliminated. It is the principle of wisdom. Her Bak didn't know how to express his gratitude. There is then a way to knowledge, he murmured, and a man may choose it. I see my path. The master took the disciple's hands. Today is your 3rd day, Her Bak. With fire in his heart, Her Bak accepted this as a gift from the nectar and felt new certainty. Now you are on the road, said the master. There's an easy way of keeping it. It is to accept without arrogant criticism the reality of a tradition passed mouth to ear, guardian of our secrets. Certain precepts will solve many an enigma for you if you learn to read and interpret in the light of the thought that formulated them. Listen then and see if this doesn't give you the proof of reality of what I have said about the heart. Quote, he whom God loves listens. He who listens not is against his nectar and the enemy of heart knowledge. It is the heart that decides whether its master shall listen or not. What one wishes a man by the formula life, health, strength is perfect of heart. A man's heart is his own nectar. End quote. Now, do you know your nectar, Her Bak?